about talking about a state. What is a state? Oh, it's easy enough to show a picture of the Capitol building in Raleigh and say that this is a symbol of it, or to play a few bars of the state song. It's easy enough to show the state flag. These are important symbols, but they're not the state. Let me tell you what North Carolina is to a North Carolinian. When the sun rises in the east, it climbs out of the Atlantic and warms the islands of the Outer Banks. As a ship loaded with cotton and tobacco pulls past the breakwater at the Morehead City harbor. If you follow the sun, you'll see cities in the Piedmont shaking off early morning, and factories of textiles and furniture and cigarettes and other products. Further west, minutes later, the mountains loom on the horizon as a man named Joe Hartley feeds his chicken near Linville. Joe Hartley is 82. He still puts in a full day's time, from dawn to dusk. The Lord laid out Joe's farm on a 45-degree angle, and Joe planted apple trees on about 30 acres of it some years ago. Apple harvest is autumn when the neighbors join with men and wagons, long ladders, new baskets. Autumn is the season for haystacks and harvest. Joe Hartley's family has lived in Linville for generations, back to Ireland. Most of the farmers are of Scotch-Irish ancestry. And in many sections, especially the more isolated ones, the old world ways and speech remain. Autumn is the season for the grinding of grain. It's a season when the trees turn to brilliant colors in the land of America's greatest reserve of hardwood trees. But the shimmering leaves foretell to the mountain farmer the winds that blow the blue from the sky, chase it with ever more ominous clouds to the colder months of snow. Not deep snow, but a colder touch of beauty. In the valley, life goes on almost as if it hadn't changed from fall. Of course, the livestock has to be fed. The haystacks gradually dwindle down to almost nothing. All in all, mountain farmers settle down for a pleasant winter, a beautiful winter. Then the clouds clear. The blue sky comes back. The mail carrier brings information about spring planting, when to send for your chickens, how much the Farmers Federation expects cattle to bring in September. The plow slices the earth. Spring comes. The year begins again. Mountains are nice places to grow up in. There's exuberance in the flashing water of a mountain waterfall. There's the adventure of riding down endless trails with a tent and a pound of bacon tied to the pack horse. There are the lakes, such as Fontana, which back water up into the coves for 30 miles. Now, this man has pulled many a fish out of the mountain streams and lakes. He's an old hand. This time looks as if he's gotten hold of a rainbow trout. The proof of any fish is in the frying pan. Nothing like an open fire for cooking. Some folks think that trout and hush puppies and coffee make a pretty good meal, especially with friends around. cool breezes in the summer, or a walk in autumn just before sundown. No matter where mountain people go, they find a good deal more beauty than they have a right to bargain for. The name of that gorge is Nantahala, a Cherokee name meaning land of the noonday sun. And deep in the Smokies to this day you'll find the Cherokee with their distinct facial characteristics, living simple lives, mostly farm folk, with quite a few who appeal to the tourist trade. They're proud people who tell the story of their tribe in a vast amphitheater during summer months, to nightly audiences which average 2,000. There are cities, too, in the mountains. The largest is Asheville, with the Smokies to the west and the Blue Ridge Mountains around her. She is the largest mountain resort city in the east. Probably the most prosperous man ever to build in Asheville was George Vanderbilt, who put up a house which is conceded to be finer than most Asheville people are accustomed to. For example, this is the home of Thomas Wolfe, who wrote about Asheville all his life. His grave is near that of another Tar Heel writer, O. Henry. Probably the best-known writer in the mountains today is Carl Sandburg of Flat Rock. Mr. Sandburg raises goats and writes poetry. There's a reason writers come to the mountains, and why religious retreats such as Junaluska are scattered around Waynesville and Asheville. For within an hour's drive can be found the mightiest of creations, the raging beauty of mountain waterfalls, the inspiring beauty of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, which North Carolina shares with Tennessee. And newest of all, the Blue Ridge Parkway, built by the federal government in Virginia and North Carolina, an engineering accomplishment that stretches along the crest of the Blue Ridge Mountains, climbs through farmland and forest land without so much as a billboard to mar the beauty of the oldest mountain range in America. The motorist may climb high above mountain valleys, may twirl around the pasture land and forest land below. He may ascend into the higher Blue Ridge Mountains, even to the top of Mount Mitchell, over 6,600 feet above the sea, highest mountain in eastern America. Good place to live. Mountains are nice to grow up in. No understanding of North Carolina is possible without knowing them and their people. The mountains are in the west, the Atlantic with its broad coastal plain in the east, and between them the rolling hills, the Piedmont. Here are most of our cities: Charlotte, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, Durham, and Raleigh are important centers of trade and commerce. In Raleigh are statues of 3 men born in North Carolina who became presidents: Johnson, Jackson, and Polk. Colleges are also a feature of the Piedmont. North Carolina State College in Raleigh, with the Women's College in Greensboro, and the University at Chapel Hill form the Consolidated University of North Carolina. Duke University is at Durham. Wake Forest and Davidson serve other areas. All in all, there are 50,000 students for the proms and activities. for the classrooms and laboratories where they study under recognized leaders of thought and research in the South, and where they spend many a pleasant fall afternoon. Almost all competitive sports are popular in the Piedmont area, but the chief form of recreation is golf, with excellent courses in the cities and ready access to the championship courses at Pinehurst and Southern Pines. Here's Sammy Sneed misses a putt at a Pinehurst tournament. Golf, cities, colleges, marks of the Piedmont. But the distinctive mark is industry, moving machines, working people. In textile manufacture, North Carolina leads the nation. Upholstering material goes to the furniture plants, also located in the center of the state. In the manufacture of wooden furniture, statistics now place North Carolina first in the nation. But the distinctly North Carolina industry is tobacco. In Durham, Winston-Salem, and Reedsville, most of America's cigarettes and other tobacco products are manufactured. The tobacco is cleaned, cut, mixed, and packaged, almost entirely by carefully supervised machines. One reason industry has grown in our state is this man, Earl Avery, and what he represents. Earl is a North Carolina laborer. He works in a clean factory removed from congestion. And he, as 2/3 of North Carolinians, lives in a rural area. Yet he's within a 15-minute drive over paved roads to a modern city. His house has electricity. His wife has a telephone. The Averys enjoy most city conveniences and advantages of farm life, too. There are no slums on a farm, and a layoff at the mill won't be so hard on this family. In order to promote modern rural living, North Carolinians are rapidly paving and improving their rural roads. New schools are being built. Hospitals and clinics are going up to better serve rural areas. And the pulse of modern living, electricity, is being taken further each day up the valleys and coves to the headwaters of the creeks. All of this is being done in order to develop a pattern of living cut to our century and its needs, and yet preserve a way of life which is basically sound and strong and good. The Piedmont, heart of the new industrial South. But the heart of the Piedmont is still with the people. $55 beer, $5 board, $45, $11, $50, $50 imperial, $50 beer, fly beer, $56 fly. Tobacco, the gold that grows in fields, king of the wide coastal plain. The tobacco is cropped in autumn. Mule pull carts are still used since tractors are too wide for the rows. The carts take the leaves to the farmyard where the women folk and a few of the men tie them on sticks to be hung for curing. Tobacco is part of the North Carolina tradition. You see, this woman has done this before. From father to son and to daughter, the ways of the tobacco farmer are passed on. Time was when cotton was king of the coastal plain, but it was hard on the land and the people. So more and more the farmers are turning to truck and fruit farming of all types. And in large numbers they are turning to green pastures, to the year-round income farming. In counties which once had only 2 or 3 herds, there now may be 200 or more, as beef and dairy cattle come into the state. From the coastal plain, North Carolinians supply cotton and tobacco to our factories and food to the markets of the East. In the extreme east of the state is the Atlantic, and along the coast of North Carolina our nation had early beginnings. The Edenton Courthouse has heard heated debates about freedom, and there was a tea party at Edenton too. Our oldest church is at Bath, and the homes of merchants and planters date back to another colorful era. Orton and Airlie plantations near Wilmington maintain the azalea gardens of the Old South. North Carolina gave more volunteers to the Confederacy and lost more men than any other state. And there's hardly a coastal town without its memorial to that war. Fort Macon, near Morehead City, is preserved as a battleground monument. It was at the Dunes of Dare that Wilbur and Orville Wright made their first aeroplane flight. The plane was built at Kitty Hawk, and the first flight was made at nearby Kill Devil Hill, the exact spot now marked by this foreground monument. The news story A.W. Drinkwater wired out about that flight is still in his possession. The editors, not believing flight possible, refused to pay the $9 charges on it. But even more dramatic in our history is the Lost Colony, commemorated by Paul Green's historic outdoor drama at Roanoke Island. It was here Eleanor Dare gave birth to Virginia, first English child born in America. It was here that the first English colony to America landed, before Jamestown or Plymouth Rock. But the settlement at Roanoke Island was not permanent. The colonists disappeared, leaving the world one of its great mysteries. Along this coast Englishmen first settled. The nation had early beginnings. Our war with ourselves we won in losing, and the first plane flew near Kitty Hawk. Today, modern beaches dot our coastline. In the same climatic belt as Italy, North Carolina is favored by the tides as by the seasons. To this young man has come that moment when he sees the ocean for the first time. It's a bit larger than he had anticipated. But he, as most, soon learns his way around on the beach. Before the day is over, the ocean is a warm and salty friend. No boy wants to leave then. Not even boys a bit older than children. Fishing, too, is a leading sport, from surf casting to the ocean piers which jut out into the breakers. And from yacht basins near Morehead, Wrightsville, Carolina, Nags Head, and other beaches, fishing boats may be chartered by men interested in the fight to be had near the Gulf Stream. This boat is off Southport, near Wilmington. And here king mackerel come aboard. Mackerel often run in large schools, and and 2 at a time is not a rarity for a boat with good fishermen. One of the hardest fighters is the dolphin, as even this small one is quite willing to prove. Our ocean ports are Wilmington and further up the coast Morehead City, both with new multi-million-dollar facilities. Tankers and freighters which leave these harbors reflect the trend to industrial development and increasing trade, as this harbor pilot might tell you. But the typical village is still the small fishing village, many of them on ocean islands across Pamlico Sound, such as Ocracoke on the Outer Banks. Near Ocracoke Light, the pirate Blackbeard was killed. Up the coast is historic Cape Hatteras Light near Buxton. Nearby is the town of Hatteras, now accessible by paved road and ferry from the north. In travel along the Outer Banks, one is likely to find wild ponies grazing, living off the sparse food available. And along Ocracoke and Hatteras Islands are the wrecks of ships, the graveyard of the Atlantic. Battered and buried, thrown onto the beach or caught in the water. Some of them in our own day and our own wars, when Torpedo Junction meant more to sailors than a name given a piece of water. In this land of oceans and winds, of wrecks and men taking their food from the sea, people have learned to live with nature, and there's harmony on the Outer Banks. A harmony broken by an occasional family squabble. But the life of any section is best seen in the work of its people, and the lifeblood of the coastline has a tang of salt to it. Work aboard a shrimp boat, for example, is typical and is part of the everyday life of this young man of Southport. Here, he and his father pull up the net to see what has been caught. Shrimp and small fish, crabs and the like, from the bottom of the sea. The first thing done is to return the net. No loss of time here. Every minute the net is at the bottom, shrimp are being caught. Then the sorting begins. How the small fry, the baby fish, should be saved in shrimping operations is a debate which has raged along all America's coastlines for many years. But it seems these two young fellows are quite above the debate. Typical of the larger commercial operation are the Menhaden or Pogie fleets, seen here in Beaufort Harbor. From Menhaden comes oil for soaps, paints, varnishes, and many other products. The boats leave at dawn or earlier. They travel singly or in a fleet. But every boat is independent. Every captain goes where he thinks he may find schools of this most valuable of commercial fish. Preparations for the day are in order. But the important job is watching. A school of Menhaden may be in the harbor, along the banks, or 10 miles at sea. The radio may give word from another boat, but you generally have to see them for yourself. And when you do, the action begins. 3 boats are used, this small one, and 2 power-driven boats which carry the net. They move to the spot where the school is sighted. And on signal from the captain, the large boats separate, dropping the net behind them. They form a large circle. When the net is pursed, the fish are caught. Then the hard work of pulling in the net begins. When the net is pulled so that the fish cover the surface, the dip net is lowered from the mother boat, and the Menhaden are hauled aboard. in some way this too is part of North Carolina. But North Carolina is more than all of this, more than the sum total of her parts. I tell you, it is hard to say all that she is. But North Carolina is her people, the menders of nets. She's the mailboat coming through a storm on Pamlico Sound. She is a boy late for school at Ocracoke and blue sky over Metamuskeek and Currituck. North Carolina is warm water around a 2-year-old boy and a girl who talks to the sand. She is the man who mows the lawn at Orton Plantation. She is dark, soiled hands in a cotton field. She is 1,000 steeples pointing upward and a boy with 1,000,000 books behind him. North Carolina is a girl who learned to count last year. She is a tradition of tobacco in field and manufacture. She is cities not overcome by numbers. She is clean industry with room around it. North Carolina is a house on a hill, and 10,000 mountain valleys and the people who work them. She is the country store communities, and clear pure water in mountain springs. She is Hiwassee and Fontana holding back power in the mountains. She is a river cutting the air near Toxaway, and a boy and girl on a rock on Grandfather Mountain. She is the beauty of the Blue Ridge and the Smokies in all their grandeur. I tell you, it is hard to say all that North Carolina is, but she is all of this and more.